Hello, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to be delivering this keynote address on behalf of the Foundation for Black Communities. I'm a social entrepreneur, and today I'll be talking about solution making, self-determination, and belonging. To start, I'd like to share a short story. I grew up in a small community in rural Alberta. It had a population of just over 10,000 people the year that I was born. In the early 1990s, when I was about 6 years old, I remember it well. The first traffic light went up in the town. Up until that year, and for many years after it, my family was, as far as we knew, the only Black family in town. Being Black in Canada, particularly in areas outside of Toronto and Montreal, often means you find yourself in predominantly white spaces and communities, feeling out of place, as if you don't quite belong. Luckily for me, I spent my summers in Guyana with family. This space was truly the opposite of the community I grew up in. This was home. I was surrounded by the sounds of soca and calypso, the cock crowing in the morning to wake me up, patois and laughter, the smells of fragrant spices and curry in the air, the taste of green mango and pepper sauce eaten on the veranda as a soft breeze blew through the palm trees or rain pattered on our zinc roof. It was in New Amsterdam and Hopetown, West Coast Province, the town established by my ancestors who were freed from enslavement in 1815, that I received my very first lessons in philanthropy and self-determination. What did that look like? First, giving starts at home. I witnessed communal care and communal living. We shared one pot with many mouths. I could never understand how my grandmother always found a way to ensure that everyone ate, despite the unpredictable streams of visitors and families popping into our house to share news, the latest joke, or play dominoes, completely unannounced. I was told parables that took some time for me to understand. For example, charity starts at home, meaning start with your own backyard. Give to your family and community first, before giving to strangers or abroad. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, meaning it's not necessary to actually say what you're giving. Don't boast about donations or volunteering. Provide your support without motive or ego. Be humble. I brought that same sense of care, community, and philanthropy back with me on the plane to Canada. As a teenager, I applied those lessons in philanthropy in the small community where I grew up, and I had my first experience with formal grant making. I had never heard the word philanthropy or foundation. I didn't know what a grant was, but I knew that I needed to address a problem. At that time, I really struggled to belong. I often felt like an outsider who didn't quite fit in, and consequently dealt with bullying. I remembered wishing I had learned how to stand up for myself when I was younger, before becoming a teenager. I looked around me and I realized that many young girls lacked the same things I lacked: positive role models. They didn't have confidence and they had low self-esteem. I wanted to change that. I wanted to find a solution, and in this case, it meant creating one. I worked to build a mentorship program at the middle school in my neighborhood. I recruited a few of my friends to work on the project, and we rolled up our sleeves, went knocking on the doors of our formal middle school teachers, and spoke to the principal to get permission to start the program. And we also set out to raise money. In this, I wrote an application to a foundation that worked with children in Calgary, the nearest major city. I was selected to meet with a panel of my peers, all children under the age of 16, who listened to me. They listened to my idea, and eventually they awarded me $3,000 to implement the project. I will never forget what it felt like to experience a problem myself, create a solution, and see the impact. That same feeling of community building, self-determination, and solution making is what brings me here today to talk about the Foundation for Black Communities. Late last June, after months of being in lockdown, feeling like the days all blurred into one. You remember that, right? Feeling like, is it Tuesday? Or maybe it's Thursday? I got a text message totally out of the blue from a professional acquaintance, Liban Abakor. It said, if you have time to chat tomorrow, I'm kind of working on this thing and you're just the person I need to speak to. I said, sure. It wasn't as if I had much to do the next day. When we got on the phone, Liban shared his idea with me. He asked, what if there was a foundation dedicated to Black people in Canada? My answer? Of course, that would be amazing. Liban told me he was pulling together people interested in building one, working to raise $300 million, and he was reaching out to see if I would join. While $300 million seemed lofty, my response was simple. When do we meet next? Like that, through word of mouth, picking up the phone and asking, hey, are you ready to build? We mobilized and started what is now known as the Foundation for Black Communities. The foundation is being stewarded by professionals in the nonprofit, charitable, and philanthropic sectors. And you may be wondering, why exactly is a foundation dedicated to Black communities even necessary? Let me help set the stage. In Canada, there are over 10,000 private and public foundations, and yet not one single one prioritizes investments into Black communities. We're talking about approximately $85 billion in assets and over $7 billion a year goes out in grant making. This is a sector of abundance, and yet for decades, Black communities have said they are excluded from the sector. They do not belong and do not benefit. Each one of us stewarding the foundation knew from our own experience that the sector was not inclusive of Black communities. Yet another predominantly white space. For the Black organizers, they had received rejection letter after rejection letter from foundations denying funding for their creative ideas. For the Black grant makers, we saw higher standards placed on Black leaders to receive funding. For Black volunteers, we did not see other Black colleagues around boardroom tables or in decision-making roles, and we hardly saw any Black people in leadership roles. Our early work was to define exactly how much support was being given to Black communities. In December 2020, in partnership with Carleton University's Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership Program and the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities, we released Unfunded, Black Communities Overlooked by Canadian Philanthropy. This groundbreaking research was the first systemic empirical examination of the extent to which Canadian philanthropy has responded to the unique and intersectional challenges facing Black communities. The data was glaring. It showed that for every $100 granted in charitable giving in Canada, as little as 7 cents goes to Black communities. 7 cents. Our accompanying community needs assessment demonstrated the exact same thing. Of the 110 Black-led, serving, and focused organizations surveyed, 69% felt that they were inadequately supported by funders in Canada, and 80% did not believe that the needs of Black communities are understood by funders. In the cases where Black organizations do receive grants, it's restrictive, typically project-based, time-limited, and non-renewable. Granting is so often done with a scarcity mindset, operationalized as power over and control over instead of power with and best power to. We're ready for a remix. And we can't forget the times that we live in. Black communities have been devastated by the pandemic and have been struggling to overcome disproportionate the disproportionate impact on our health and economic outcomes. And we all know that this is in addition to the systemic anti-Black racism that permeates every sector and all of our society. Across Canada, Black organizations have stepped up at such a crucial time when the safety net for Black communities has been decimated by COVID-19. Black communities have provided essential services such as transportation to food banks, delivering PPE, helping people fill out income supplement applications, and helping seniors to get on the internet and access virtual healthcare. These services and so much more. Not only are they helping fill the gaps in the safety net, but they are becoming the safety net, driving our collective well-being. Again, recognizing problems, creating solutions. Without these organizations, the devastating impact of COVID-19 would have been worse, without a doubt. And the reality is, due to chronic underfunding, many Black community organizations are sadly closing their doors at a time when they're needed the most. Similarly, recognizing the glaring gap within the philanthropic sector, solution making followed. The Foundation for Black Communities was created for and driven by Black communities in Canada. This national grant-making foundation exists to ensure our flourishing and self-determination. In continuation of the incredible mobilizing of elders and community organizations before us, we are building a home in philanthropy for Black communities, a place where we belong. We envision a future where Black communities in Canada have the resources, organizations, and influence to shape their own solution making. To advance that, we invest in change making, working alongside Canadian philanthropic, government, business organizations to ensure Black-led, Black-serving, and Black-focused nonprofit, charitable, and grassroots initiatives have the sustained resources and infrastructure they need to make meaningful impact. At the heart of the foundation are these values. We are accountable to Black communities, which means we measure our actions by their impact on Black communities directly, and we are committed to sustainable funding strategies and transparency. We celebrate intersectionality, which means we embrace the diversity of Black communities in Canada, coming from African, Caribbean descent, Afro-Nova Scotian, Black pioneer, Afro-Indigenous, Afro-Latina, mixed Black, first generation, newcomer, and we make space for various and intersecting identities across, but definitely not limited to, gender, sexual orientation, ability, religion, age, and ethnicity differences. And we pursue justice, which means we champion equity and social justice, and we drive anti-oppressive and anti-racist practices. This philanthropy is not defined by charitable receipts or name recognition. Black philanthropy is about continuing the long-standing traditions of African and diasporic communities that ensures that giving starts at home. Our work falls into 3 areas: grant-making that is community-driven, putting Black people in decision-making roles, and dedicating funding exclusively to Black-led, serving, and focused charitable, nonprofit, and grassroots organizations. We're a collaborative partner to other foundations and government, ensuring that we create an ecosystem of Black-focused funding. Finally, we advance public policy that benefits Black people. We do this by supporting community and civic engagement. Essentially, we're changing the system. What started as a dream exists today. We are charting a path to build long-term, committed, and sustainable resources that can withstand changing public sentiment and changing political will. This is about funding our ideas and our solution making. This is about self-determination. This is about belonging. In line with the theme of this conference, we have the tenacity to make funding real. Thank you.